happy to be here with you all today. My name is Caroline Jones, and I'm going to be talking about the healing power of connection, children, and trauma. I began my career as an ICU nurse, obtained a master's degree in health administration, became a practice administrator for a medical group, and soon formed my own consulting agency. As my administrative skills and responsibilities deepened, I missed the direct service of working with people. And 10 years ago, I became a court-appointed special advocate for children in foster care. Children who are abused and neglected and removed from their own homes. My first case was a little 10-year-old boy, Tyrone. He was found in a row home with no food, no heat, and no electricity in the middle of winter. And I would meet with him every 2 weeks and ask him how things were going, how I could help. And at the end of every session, I said, "Is there anything I can do for you?" I worked with him for over a year. He was so guarded and had built such a wall that he would never really divulge or share. After 12 months of working with him, I asked again at the end of our session, "Is there anything I can do?" And this time, he looked down, and his hands began to shake. And I could tell he was getting filled up. And I said, "Just tell me, buddy. We'll figure it out. Just tell me." And when he finally got the strength to talk, he looked up, and there were tears rolling down his face. And he said, "Miss Caroline, why am I in foster care?" And his deep pain and sorrow met with my shame at not helping this boy sooner with this heavy burden that he had carried this entire time. What he was asking was, why did my mom leave me? Am I unworthy? Am I unlovable? And he was a beautiful child that any mother would love, but his mom had issues that had nothing to do with him, and we helped him to understand that. It took time and work, but he eventually came to work through that. I decided I would work to help prevent that from happening to other children. And at the inspiration of our children and with the support of my husband, we founded Kind to Kids Foundation. And since that time, we served over 14,000 children in foster care, poverty, and children at risk, with education programs and support services that help them to connect in the world. Because as Mother Teresa says, when a society has problems, it's because we've forgotten that we belong to one another. And connection is vital to our success in the world. It begins at birth. Babies are born helpless and need to be protected and cared for in order to survive. Their brains grow at a super rate. For every second, they make 1 million neural connections. 90% of a child's brain will develop before the age of 5. This will be the architecture and the foundation of a child's future learning and their behavior and health. The connection starts with what's termed as the serve and return. As babies are helpless and they cry, and the mother comes and soothes them, and the baby learns that the world is safe and that they're protected and comforted. It is the basis for their development of human relations. So many neural connections are growing that the brain starts to reinforce experiences that are repeated and prune those that are not used. Neuroscientists have often said, neurons that fire together, wire together. In the early 1970s, scientists discovered neuroplasticity, that our brain has the ability to change throughout our entire lives. This new understanding fueled therapy and helped people who dealt with the trauma of abuse long into their adult lives. It's important to know that a child's brain is built from the bottom up. If a child grows with a responsive caregiver, they develop a strong and solid foundation. Without a loving caregiver, there's gaps in their learning and gaps in their behavior. A child is occupied with survival and can't develop the skills they need to develop that solid foundation. Adverse child experiences, otherwise known as ACEs, will impact them, many into adulthood. With a weak and unstable foundation, you can see how it's easier for things to come toppling down years later. The brain's a highly integrated organ, and it operates in coordination with our entire body and the world around us. In the early years, it's the most active and flexible period for making neural connections. And as we get older, it requires more effort. That's why the sooner a child gets the help they need to overcome trauma, the more the brain's ability to change and overcome. As you can see, it takes a lot more effort to fix things later on. Childhood trauma usually comes as a result of a breach in trust in a relationship. There may be an abuse of power where a child's harmless to defend themselves. Trauma-informed care is imperative to help the child to provide safety and security and give them connection and emotional support. The best way to heal is to patiently help them step by step. For a child who's been abused and neglected, it's hard to figure out the world because they've been hurt by the very people who are supposed to protect them. In our life skills classes for young girls, Diana was a beautiful girl with big blue eyes. She had a deep sadness about her and often was longing for attention. Our class was on mindfulness and learning to think good thoughts. And we talked about how our mind was like a garden, and we had to pull the unhealthy thoughts like weeds from our minds so we could let the beautiful flowers and the beautiful healthy thoughts grow. Diana shared after class how she had a bad thought that kept going on and round in her mind. And it was something her mom had said to her when she was in one of her alcoholic rages, that Diana was the worst mistake she had ever made in her life. I reinforced to her that she was a beautiful presence in the world, and she made the world a better place because she was in it. And Diana got the help and the therapy she needed to move forward in life. Trauma impacts how a child sees themselves in the world and what they believe about themselves. They will often continue to maintain defensive strategies long after they're safe. They're still living in a state of constant stress and danger. They will develop persistent fear response, hyperarousal, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety. Former foster children are almost twice as likely to suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder than U.S. war veterans. And this is according to a Harvard Medical School study in CASA family programs. Children often begin to believe this idea, children who are abused and neglected, that their lives are somehow worth less than children who grow up in stable families, children who have things because of circumstance. So we work to dismantle those unhealthy thought patterns, and we fill the spaces with love and kindness and strategies that help them move forward, to help them connect and move forward to a future of promise. Dr. Dan Siegel from Harvard Medical School and Tina Bryson developed and wrote this book. It's called The Whole Brain Child, and it helps us to understand our brain in a simple way. They talk about the upstairs and the downstairs brain, where the downstairs are critical functions like breathing, fight and flight response, and emotional behaviors and emotions. Upstairs is more complex. It's problem solving, decision making, planning. And children who have trauma often have a disconnect between the two brains. They have difficulty managing their emotions. For example, when little Joey's throwing a tantrum in the grocery store because he can't have the cereal he wants, he loses control. He can't think clearly. He can't calm himself down or control himself. He's in his downstairs brain. An attuned parent will understand this and talk to him at that level. Joey, I see you're upset. I see you, I hear you. Only after he is calmed down can you access his upstairs brain and address him with reason. As we work with children who often act out, it's up to us as adults to approach the children in a helpful way, with effective communication. We need to keep in control of our own selves when a child is acting out and not resort to our own downstairs brain. There's no such thing as a perfect parent, and we've all crossed the lines at times. But a yelling adult who is too punitive can be terrifying to a small child. If it does happen, it's important to stop. Understand that you're wrong. Apologize. Show the child comfort. Every child deserves to be safe and secure. Every relationship has difficult times, and being a consistent and careful and respectful caregiver will help you repair those patches and build trust and rebuild trust. Today's children have many caregivers. We have working parents, we have grandparents and coaches and other people in a child's life. Each of these caregivers can take an active role. The number one predictor of a child's success in life is connection with a healthy adult who helps them to understand that I am worthy, that I belong. We all can reflect on someone in our lives when we were children who helped us and how much they impacted our lives. To develop a relationship, you have to prioritize it. There's no such thing as just scheduling quality time. You need both quantity and quality. You need to spend time with them, listen, understand their world, their hopes, their dreams, and their fears. Parents can help children believe in themselves and that they're an interactive part of the world around them. These secure attachments help children to develop and build resiliency. Resiliency comes with supportive relationships, with positive experiences, and the capacity to adapt to the world around them. This gives a child a foundation to try new things and to overcome obstacles. Technology doesn't replace bonding. We've all seen children sitting by themselves in a restaurant, playing on their phone and devices. It's an easy thing to do. But as a society, we now have an epidemic of loneliness. According to a Harvard study, 47% of Americans often feel alone, left out, and lacking a meaningful connection in life. We need to be present and connected with people and have actual human interaction. All relationships take work. Just as if you had a plant, you would give it sunshine and water to help it grow. We have to give our children care and connection to help them grow. This will lead to strong relationships that endure. I'd like to conclude with a story. In our life skills class for young boys in foster care, the topic was about thinking of your future and setting goals. The boys talked about topics like doing their homework and practicing basketball. Justin was a quiet, pensive boy, and he didn't want to say what his goal was out loud. But it was important to him, and he motioned for me to come over and look at his goal. When I saw it, I understood why. It was too raw and too painful to say out loud. My goal is for my mom to get better so I can go home with her. We both looked at each other as I could feel the pain, and his eyes filled with tears, and they ran down his face. As I sat down next to him, I explained that that was for the adults to work on, for his mom to work on what she needed to do. And what Justin needed to do was to be the best little boy he could, to grow and be strong and play. He was grateful for our conversation, and we continued the class. Afterwards, everybody left the room, and Justin came back and gave me a big hug. Thanks for helping me, Miss Caroline. Well, after he left, then it was my turn to cry. I started bawling because I was so grateful to be there with him and to help him and to share and connect. and so sorry that these children have to go through these trials and these terrible things they endure. But the good news is that we help them with real practical skills and strategies every single day when we're with them in the classroom. And as I watched him run outside and play with the other boys, it was my turn to be in awe at the burden he had to carry, and grateful it was just a little bit lighter. The great leader Nelson Mandela is often described by a South African word, Ubuntu, which means we are all bound together in ways that are invisible to the eye, that there is a oneness to humanity, and that we achieve ourselves by sharing ourselves and by connecting and caring for each other. Today, as you move forward and you go out in the world, I ask you to learn as much as you can about trauma-informed care, about programs like Kind to Kids that help our most vulnerable children to make our society and their lives a better world. Because you go back to basics. It's people together, connecting, and helping our children with love and kindness. We take their hand, and together we walk and learn a way forward to a future bright with promise. And their eyes are bright, and they have hope, and they are dreaming. For as Mother Teresa said, we belong to each other. Thank you.